On This Week in Enterprise Tech, a botnet that can throw 150 gigabits per second of traffic at you. The military finds out that the Internet of Things is a pain in the... And Skreens. Lots and lots of Skreens. Twice on the set.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Enterprise Tech is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This is Twit, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 161, recorded October 2nd, 2015 for October 9th, 2015. Skreens. This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Harry's. For guys who want a great shave experience for a fraction of what you're paying now, go to harrys.com. Get $5 off your first purchase by entering the code ENTERPRISE when you check out. And by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring? With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 100-plus job sites, including social networks, all with a single click. Screen, rate, and hire the right candidates fast. Try ZipRecruiter with a free 4-day trial now at ZipRecruiter.com/Twit. And by Igloo Software. Igloo is an internet that you'll actually like. Use blogs, calendars, file sharing forums, task management, and wikis to work better together with your teams. Sign up now and try it for free at igloosoftware.com/Twit. Welcome to Twit, This Week in Enterprise Tech. It's the show dedicated to the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and the geek who just wants to know how the world is connected. I'm your host, Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit, your guide to all things in the enterprise. But of course, I'm not guiding you by myself. I've got my regular cast of characters, my good friends, starting with Mr. Brian Chee, the director of the Advanced Network Computing Laboratory in Honolulu, Hawaii. Brian, it's good to see you again, my friend. How are things out in paradise?
It's a little hot and sticky, but at least the trade winds are back, and they are saying we have yet another tropical storm off our shores. Wee-hee.
Well, just remember, we would kill for some tropical storms here in California. Hopefully El Nino will come and deliver us plenty of dihydrogen monoxide. Now, on the other coast, because, you know, we have to have the complete representation of the United States on the show, is Mr. Curtis Franklin from Information Week Radio. Curtis, thank you again for joining us. And how have you been? You're home, so you're not on the road, which is kind of strange.
I'm home, though when we get to the date for this show, I will have been on the road for a week. We'll be running off the tail end of the Gartner Symposium. Looking forward to doing that. And according to the weather guessers, it's going to be Florida spectacular weather for all those folks coming down. So I'm hoping that's the case.
Yes, we love some Florida spectacular weather. Now, I am going to break the fourth wall here and just tell you all that, yes, this episode is pre-recorded, and that's because there's some travel. I have to go off and do some priest things, but we didn't want to leave you without your weekly dosage of enterprise goodness. So, gentlemen, what do you say? Let's start off with the blips. This first one is, well, kind of scary. Can you imagine a Linux botnet that could throw enough traffic at you to kill your network? Hey, IT admins, yeah, you. Now, the most prepared among you have designed your networks so that they can block attacks and probes upstream, sparing your precious last-mile links just for your legitimate traffic. I'm sure that you've contracted with your ISPs for some sort of decent protection, but let me ask you, could your network survive a 150 gigabit per second DDoS attack? The answer is no, of course not. No network can support that. And unfortunately, that's the new bar in the back and forth against bad actors. The Linux-based XOR DDoS botnet hit a new milestone 2 weeks ago when the attack traffic peaked at 150 gigabits per second. That botnet has been used to attack 20 targets a day, the vast majority of which are in Asia. The malware takes advantage of millions of poorly configured Linux systems, especially routers and appliances that have long sat unattended in data closets around the world.
TAP gets cloudy and healthy. Intel is continuing with the soft launch of its open source big data application development platform, TAP, adding systems integrator and cloud service provider partners, as well as a handful of healthcare system pilot programs. The Trusted Analytics Platform, TAP, which Intel announced it would take open source in August at the Intel Developer Forum, pulls together all the different layers of software and tools that are required in a big data application. The platform approach is designed to make the field of users who can develop big data applications as broad as possible. Pilot projects of TAP include a handful in the healthcare space at Penn Medicine, Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, and one at Oregon Health and Science University called the Collaborative Cancer Cloud. Cancer Cloud project allows hospitals to securely share patient genomic data and other health data to look for the new ways of determining overall health and potentially finding life-saving discoveries. Why does Intel care about big data? It's simple. The more big data projects there are out there, the more servers that are sold, and the more server chips Intel will sell.
Well, Microsoft's love affair with Linux, that's a weird statement, continues as the company releases HDInsight, Microsoft's big data Hadoop on Azure service for Ubuntu Linux in its Azure cloud. In the category of snowblowers in hell, the Microsoft Azure team is making new virtual appliance templates available with Ubuntu Linux and HDInsight for Hadoop goodness. This partnership with Canonical, Ubuntu's home team, and Hortonworks, Hadoop House, gives customers a super fine way to distribute out big data tweaking on the Azure cloud. What this means is new choices for customers to utilize open source solutions, but with 5 nines of reliability, according to TK Ranjanaran, oh boy, Corporate VP of Databases and Big Data at Microsoft.
Bump, bump, bump. Another troll bites the dust. Now, everyone loves a patent troll as it breathes its last dying breath, and that's what happened last week to eDeca LLC, the most prolific non-practicing entity of last year. Judge Rodney Gilstray, the East Texas U.S. District Judge, who is more known for being a patent troll-friendly court, wiped out over 10% of his case docket by kicking out 168 lawsuits that eDeca filed on U.S. Patent 6266674, which tried to claim the uniqueness of a variable and a memory pointer. Claiming that eDeca's claims didn't meet the standards for patenting, Judge Gilstray also broke with his own tradition by formally requesting defendants submit briefs as to why they should be awarded attorney's fees from eDeca. Although this doesn't solve the patent troll system, it is nice to see them die screaming every once in a while.
Open source code is worth $5 billion. According to a newly released Linux Foundation report that aims to spell out the value of dev costs saved by the code embedded in its collaborative projects, it found that there are 115,013,302 lines of source code present in those collaborative projects. It would take 41,192 and a quarter person years, or 1,373 developers working for 30 years to recreate the code bases. The theoretical price tag for all those theoretical coders, around $5 billion. So the next time someone says that open source code is worth what you pay for it, remind them that the real value might just be in checks that no one had to write.
Star Trek, here we come. The first nano-photonic memory chip is announced. Researchers at Oxford and Karlsruhe Institute of Technology in Germany have figured out how to do a fully optical way of storing data that got its start with rewritable DVDs. Rewritable DVDs and CDs save data using a material called GST, an alloy made from germanium, tellurium, and antimony that changes its structure when hit by a laser. By tweaking the structure using nanoscale waveguides, the researchers are able to store upwards of 8 bits of information per write cycle instead of a single bit, also achieving significant speed increases over typical flash storage. So while this is clearly just laboratory experiments at the moment, this could spell a big change in the storage marketplace in the not-too-distant future.
Seeing dollar signs in the Internet of Things, Cisco has jumped into the data prep market. Data prep is the process of gathering, evaluating, cleaning, combining, and organizing data before it's sent to analytic tools. While it sounds like a task that is already part of big data analytic tools, Cisco is counting on the exoflood from IoT-enabled devices to require a new layer of abstraction to make proper correlations from such disparate data. Cisco claims that their data prep services will provide faster and more comprehensive insights from connected devices, as well as far greater scalability. Most importantly, Cisco positions themselves in the increasingly important and lucrative gap between traditional IT and enterprise-based analytics. That does it for the blips. Next, we're going to be jumping into the bytes, specifically bytes on the Internet of Things. But before we do that, let's go ahead and thank the first sponsor of this episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech. And it starts with a question. Do you like shaving? Of course not. For most of us, shaving is an ordeal. It's something that we have to do. It's a chore, but it's not something that we enjoy. And why would you enjoy it? If you shave today, it means that, well, you've got to go to the store and you've got to find razors that are locked behind locked cases like they're some sort of artifact out of Fort Knox. You have to find someone who really doesn't want to be in the store to unlock that, get it to you, and then overpay for what really is just a couple of strips of metal. Yeah, you could do it that way. You could go out every once in a while and buy yourself a supply of overpriced blades and really uncomfortable handles, or you could go with Harry's. Now, Harry's understands that we want something more. We don't want to get caught up in the tech. We want to get caught up in the experience. If you've had to shave, then you will love what this shaving kit can do for you. Harry's is disrupting the shaver racket by offering us a smooth, high-quality shave at about half the price of big brand blades. Harry's was founded by two guys, Andy and Jeff, who had a simple vision for a better shaving experience. They make their own razors, they ship them for free to your front door, and they guarantee your satisfaction. On each kit, you get a razor, 3 blades, and foaming shave gel. The Truman kit is their starter, and at just $15, there's no reason not to try it. They also have an aftershave moisturizer that protects and hydrates. Now, as a Neanderthal shaver, I have no idea what that means, but I like it. The bottom line is that you're going to get a shave delivered to you for a fair price. Do you really need another reason? Go to harrys.com and get $5 off your first purchase with the code ENTERPRISE. That's harrys.com, HARRYS.com, and use the promo code ENTERPRISE at checkout. Once again, that's harrys.com, promo code ENTERPRISE. And we thank Harry's for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Gentlemen, let's jump back into it. Evidently, for the Pentagon, IoT is a PITA. When IoT was becoming a thing, some folks at the Pentagon looked at the promise of the Internet of Things, and they were impressed. They thought about collecting performance data on weapon systems to aid with the next design of the next generation of tech. They looked at remotely monitoring equipment, health data for soldiers, and environmental data from across a theater of operations or across multiple theaters of operations. The promise looked good, and even though they were at the time considering the risk of connecting all of these things across battlefield networks, they figured that the pros far outweighed the cons. Well, things have changed. We now know that there's no such thing as an unbreakable network, an unbreakable system. If you connect a system to some sort of external network, it will always, by definition, be vulnerable. Admiral Michael Rogers, the commander of Cyber Command, testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee that the United States military has no choice now but to go back on a thought process that has spanned several decades and several $billion and get rid of a lot of that IoT. Cheebert, let me toss this over to you. It's really easy to look at something like this and say, well, that was stupid. Why would you want to connect all of these systems to not just the internet, but just any network? Why wouldn't you want these to be standalone? Now, they are so sensitive, they're so important that you can't risk connecting them to a network. But maybe you could give us some insight as to what the military wanted with their own Internet of Things.
Well, I'll tell you, your remotely monitoring equipment, its real name is called IVIS. A lot of the tanks and armored vehicles in the U.S. Army inventory actually have the ability to phone home and say, I'm broke, I need such and such a part. You know, Network Appliance has been doing that for storage arrays forever and ever. I will fess up, I was actually involved with a couple of these, and the DARPA Sense-It project literally was microsensor networks for the warfighter that also included environmental, seismic, and acoustic. We were heady in those days. We wanted more information. We wanted to give the commanders enough information to be able to go and do a better job so that we put less of our human beings at risk. And the big answer was, gee, let's go and get them more information so they can make better decisions. Right down to things like the gate guards. We wanted the gate guards to be able to go and take a smart card, put it in, and be able to instantly, and we thought securely, bring up pictures and fingerprints so that we could go and make sure that the person attempting to go into that facility really was that person. There was a lot of things, and we all thought back in those days that having really, really good perimeter firewalls was good enough. But as we've spoken about many, many times on this show, perimeter security is dead. So I think a lot of the rethinking is, do you even connect some of these? Because the best security measure is an air gap. You know, that way at least you only have to deal with human factors on whether or not your data is going to leak. But yeah, I got to imagine that my fellow friends in uniform are going to be taking a really, really hard look and saying, hey, do we really need that on the internet, or can we just use it isolated? And I think that's one of the things that our friends at the Pentagon are going to have to take a really, really hard look at. And sorry, I was actually one of the people involved with the whole thing of getting data out of the field, getting data out of the places that we need it, and let us make better decisions with better data. I definitely got involved in that and got carried away, I guess.
You know, Chee, it's interesting because, again, and this is why I preface this whole discussion with, of course, hindsight is 2020, but it's easy now to look back and say, well, that was stupid. Why would you want to do that? In fact, we talk about Internet of Things all the time in the sense of the Internet of Things that shouldn't be connected to the Internet. But there is this tinkering spirit in IT of just get it to work. You know, yes, of course, more data is always better. More information is always better. And it's sometimes difficult to look down the road 5, 10, 15 years and say, wow, this is going to open up a huge security vulnerability. But Curtis, let me throw over to you. The Admiral, in his words, said, we are trying to overcome decades of a thought process where we assume that the development of our weapon systems, that external interfaces, if you will, with the outside world, were not something to be overly concerned with. And I think that really sums up. He was trying to be honest. He was saying, look, we figured that we would always be able to protect those external interfaces. And now, as we've talked about it, with advanced persistent threats, with evolving morphologies of attacks, you can't. You have to assume that an external interface, an external gatekeeper, is at some time going to fail. That's not just for the military, right? I mean, we're getting that on the enterprise side. You're seeing that Information Week Radio with the execs that you talk to, where they're starting to realize that the gatekeepers they set up, the firewalls that they created, are just sort of false hopes of security.
Oh, absolutely. We're starting to see a realization that basic perimeter security isn't nearly enough and hasn't been for a long time. The thing that really concerns me, though, is the number of places where it's still true, where you have things like industrial control over, chemical or physical processes, where the networks and the components of the networks are not protected at all. The basic approach there seems to be, why on earth would anyone want to attack what we do? There's no money involved here. That it's just controlling a machine. And so I think that the first thing that has to change, as the Admiral said, is this thought process that says, well, we don't have to worry about it because no one would ever want to hack into our systems. If you have a system, someone wants to hack into it. We've seen that on the very largest scale. We've seen it in my own dear wife's website, which covers an obscure Japanese fibercraft, which has been hacked by a group of Iranian hackers now twice. If something's out there on the internet, someone's going to want to hack it. And if it's perceived as valuable enough, and weapon systems are, it doesn't even have to really be on the public internet. It can be on a private network if it has an interface that is somehow accessible to anyone else. And anything happening via RF is accessible to other people. So the basic mindset is one that is changing in the military, in large business, and especially in the manufacturing and the utilities sectors, where I'm afraid they're getting a big dose of reality in a big hurry.
Chee, we've got CR1 in the chat room who is saying, as long as all of our networking equipment is built in China, any discussion about securing the IoT is kind of a moot point. Would you agree with that? Because I know there is a lot of cynicism about that. Our gear isn't made here, but I think there's also a little bit of a false sense of security about gear that's made here.
You got to remember just that it's a global economy. Things are made all over the place. You know, I have many, many stories about equipment that was designed in America and it became too expensive to manufacture here. So they said, well, if we just send just chips out, no problem. Well, they got their product back and it was nice and cheap like they had hoped. And then within not a whole long time, their competitor came out with an identical product. They bought one, tore it apart, and peeled the top off a chip and found that the company's logo was actually etched in the silicon still. They literally just made a copy of it. The point I'm getting at is our components are made internationally. It's just too expensive. The only way we're going to start being able to really and truly trust our electronics is if we start bringing some of this stuff back in-house and we make sure that we have a bunch of controls in place. You know, there's an awful lot of corporations that their radiation hardened gear is only done in the US and it's only done by trusted manufacturers. And those are very good reasons. There's internationally, sometimes we have vendors that, for safety's sake, you know, because they want to make money, they'll cut corners. And for safety's sake, that's not very good, especially if you have to depend on component X in orbit to keep your astronauts alive. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we need to take a good hard look at. And I think the unfortunate thing is our friends in the Pentagon also probably need to take a really, really hard look at their supply chain, because I'll bet you the supply chain weaves through China.
Curtis, I want to look at one of the most notable breaches. This is one of the things that has really driven this pullback from having everything networked, and that's the F-35. So the F-35, one of the most expensive procurement programs in U.S. military history. Some people look at it as a boondoggle. Some other people look at it as the development of necessary technologies for the next generation of warfighters. However you want to look at it, we know that there was a breach. We know that there was a breach of several of the third-party partners who were working specifically on performance data and design specs for the F-35 fighter. We know that that breach probably ended up in a lot of that data being transferred to China, and we know that China actually showed off the J-31, which to all intents and purposes looks like a copycat of the J-35 made possible because they had access to data, which meant that they didn't have to do a lot of the ground-level development, saving them billions and billions and billions of dollars in the creation of a next-generation aircraft. So we already have a concrete example of the harm that you can have when you have such a large network with so few controls. Knowing that, what would you say is the next step? I mean, there's this idea of reducing the footprint. Is that enough? Is it enough to say, well, we're going to reduce the attack surface? Or do you have to start, as we said at the beginning of this conversation, start taking things offline, start air-gapping systems so that this performance data is not accessible at all from any external network?
Well, I think that what might end up happening is some sort of compromise between those two, you know, where something is online during times of collaboration, during times when it's needed, and offline the rest of the time. You know, we've gotten very accustomed to the notion that everything is going to be connected all the time. And the fact is, just as we don't really need all of the lights in an office to be on all the time, we may not need every bit of data to be available to everyone all the time. I know that there are some mobile device management systems that do a good job of time-limited controls. I've seen some system control applications that do the same thing, where you can time limit when people can get onto the system or gain access to the system from outside. The next step, and the one that we really need to go to, is one where there are some physical, as you say, air gaps in there, because as we all know, things like control and management software can be compromised just as easily as any other software. So the thing that changes is, I think in many cases, getting back to the notion that access is not something that we have to have all the time, at least not access to everything. And perhaps the value of information will begin to be defined by just how tightly the time periods it's available are controlled.
Chee, I want to end this discussion with you. The DoD, in responding to the Admiral, has already announced that they're starting a program to reduce its attack surface. They're going to go from 15,000 enclaves, so that's basically networks, the networks that can be accessed from the outside world, from 15,000 down to about 500. They're also going to move from 1,000 firewalls to between 50 and 200. So yes, it is a much smaller target, but one of the troubling things for me is I don't see a lot of the announcements saying that they're going to move away from the traditional view of security as being firewall, good guys on the outside, on the inside, bad guys on the outside. Do you believe that any type of new security that does not assume the attacker is already inside the walls is doomed to fail?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And going from 1,000 firewalls to between 50 and 200 is the wrong way to be going. At the very least, they need to be going and chopping their networks up so that they can implement zones. So you can implement, at the very least, trust zones so that, you know, point of sale isn't mixed with the general manager's office, you know, that type of thing, you know, to use the Target example. I'll tell you right now, the Department of Defense is still sitting on an amazing amount of real honest to God IPv4 address space. And they use entire class C's willy-nilly. They have entire class B's all over the place. You know, maybe they might want to seriously consider, getting some more proxies in there, getting some more zones. If you have real good address space, use it. Go and create more zones. You know, segment things up. Yeah, I do agree. Vulnerability zones is definite, but if you're going to take a step at least in the right direction. Then give yourself the time, give yourself the access points so you can start putting in more intelligent monitoring systems. So at least you don't have something like Sony where the person's been in there for, several months and stole terabytes worth of data. They need to take a much more modern approach to their security, and they need to also assume that the barbarians are in the walls already.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think this is a reactionary thing where they're looking at being attacked. They're looking at all this data that has been exfilled, and they're saying, okay, well, how about this? We'll get stronger walls. We'll concentrate ourselves so that we can get stronger walls and spend more time defending those walls, which again does not solve for the fact that you have to assume, not you should assume, but you have to assume that they're already inside. And the only way to solve for this is to develop your network and your networking resources. That means your people, your IT people, so that you can start to trust no one. You can assume that everyone needs to have very strong credentials and authorization that has within the credentials where they should be able to visit and what data they should be able to access. And until you do that, you're still doing the old castle mentality where we put all the jewels in one place and we just hope to God that the walls are thick enough. Well, when we come back, we're going to take a blast from the recent past. We're going to be jumping back over to Black Hat. I spoke with the folks from Zimperium Z Labs. You may remember them. They've been in the news because they found the stage fright exploit. That's right, the one that affected so many Android devices around the world. Well, we had a nice, close, personal talk with them for a couple of minutes, and I want to share some of the insight that we had from that visit. But before we do that, let's go ahead and thank the second sponsor of this episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech. and it's ZipRecruiter. Now, let me ask you, are you an owner of a business, or are you in charge of hiring for a business? Because if you are, then you understand the simple truth that the people that you hire, your employees, are your public face. They are the ones who people are going to see. They're going to be the ones who decide the success or failure of any endeavor. And in order to have a good business, you have to have good employees. And to have good employees, you have to cast a large enough net to bring them in. Well, that's what ZipRecruiter lets you do. Posting jobs in one place isn't enough to find quality candidates, and short staffing leaves little time to post to dozens of job sites. But with ZipRecruiter, you can post to 100+ job sites with a single click and be instantly matched to candidates from over 6 million. That's right, million resumes. Just listen to Dan. He's an actual ZipRecruiter client, and he wrote, "The hardest part about running a business when you need to hire is that you have to spend extra time recruiting while you're short-staffed. But with ZipRecruiter, I've gotten quality candidates within 24 hours of posting a job. ZipRecruiter's website makes this process so much faster by letting me manage candidates in one place. Just post once, and within 24 hours, you can watch candidates roll into ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. They've been used by over 400,000 businesses, and you can try it now for free. Getting the right people for your company is so important. Do you really want to leave that up to chance? Today, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/Twyit. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Twyit. And we thank ZipRecruiter for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, let's go ahead and jump back to Black Hat 2015. Standing around with some of the brightest, the best, and the most passionate people in the security field, we spoke with the folks over at Zimperium Z Labs, and this is what they had to say about stage fright. I'm Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit with Twit TV, here at Black Hat 2015 in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm standing with Joshua and Zook from Zimperium Z Labs. Now, you may have heard Zimperium in the news because they found stage fright. That's right, the Android vulnerability that affects basically every Android handset currently active out there. Now, Joshua, I want to start with you. What is Zimperium Z Labs?
So it's our research team within the company. We are focused mainly on improving our products, but also on doing proactive research to eliminate security vulnerabilities and improve the ecosystem overall.
Zuck, one of the questions that people have whenever they hear about a vulnerability like this is, how do you go about researching it? Do you just start hammering on the different modules? Do you just get a device and throw as much traffic at it? What kind of process do you use when you're looking for the next big exploit?
So it's different between different vulnerabilities, but basically you look for the lowest hanging fruits, and you look for the code that is most likely to have vulnerabilities in it. So if you look for native code, it has better chances of being vulnerable, or basically if you look for things that can be run remotely, it's even better. So there are multiple factors, and I guess this stage fright actually had many of these. So it can be run remotely, it can be triggered via browser, via MMS, via other methods that Josh have disclosed today. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, so it makes sense why you would start with stage fright, but then that begs the question, if that's your criteria, what else is out there? I mean, this is the media module, this is the media player. What's next on your list that you think you should hammer on?
iOS.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there. Josh, I want to go back to you. Let's be perfectly blunt. There are people in the community who are saying, Zimperium Z Labs, they're idiots, because they found this incredible exploit that they could have made a lot of money off of it, and you decided to play good citizen. I mean, you got a bounty from Google, but it was next to nothing. I mean, it wasn't anything. It was almost kind of insulting. Yeah. Why? So why would you be the good citizen where no one else seems to want to be?
Well, it seemed to me like there were very few people out there willing to be that person. So I saw an opportunity to stick it to them, if you will, and show them that, you know, there are serious vulnerabilities in Android, and I wanted to show them in a way that they really couldn't deny it, right? Like, so I think that it worked out really well. You know, there's been a lot of languishing and ho-hum and mumbling in the ecosystem about people wanting to do stuff and they never had a reason to. So now they have a reason to. And and it just goes right with my goal of improving the ecosystem overall. I mean, I have an Android device, so I want to make sure that it's as safe as it can be, and that's the best way I can do that.
You
Sort of running my own, completely from scratch, and I don't have time for that.
You still run an Android device because there's people out there who they're running screaming. They're saying, wait a minute, no, Android now must die. They're looking at the fact that you've got so much fragmentations because every carrier wants to control what the OS on their connected device does, that patches for this may take a long time to roll out, may never roll out. And people are saying, well, is Android dead? You say no.
Yeah, I don't think it's dead by any means. They're working on a brand new release that's going to come out relatively soon, before the end of the year for sure. And it's probably going to bring some new things that we haven't seen yet that will improve things as well. And I don't think that really a billion device users are just going to give up and move along. That's very unlikely, especially considering you have like 10% of those or 12% of those people that are using devices that are so old that they clearly love it or it's good enough for them. You know what I mean? I definitely am not frightened, to use that term, to the point where I would ditch Android.
Let's talk a little bit about Google's response, because we've all heard certain stories of a large corporation hearing about some sort of exploit and them either not responding or trying to bury it. Google responded relatively quickly. Are you happy, either of you, are you happy with the way that Google came back to you?
So I wouldn't say happy, but the world, basically it's bigger than stage fright. What we have done here is getting everyone together and ensuring that the customers that bought a phone a few years ago would still get an update. So we have initiated Zimperium Handset Alliance, and already 25 carriers and vendors, including the largest carriers and vendors in the world, have already signed up for that. So it looks like we made a bigger effect on improving the security of Android, and that's what we wanted. We didn't want anything else. That was our goal.
Let's talk a little bit about that ecosystem, because one of the booming, burgeoning markets in enterprise are analytics companies that will look for the latest exploits, and they'll protect your IT plant, your servers. They'll give you advanced warning of exploits that are in the wild, and look out for attack traffic that might be heading in your direction. Do you think that same sort of ecosystem is heading to the mobile device market, that we're going to have to start protecting our mobile devices the same way we protect our servers?
I think absolutely. That's like what our company is focused on. So yeah.
We've been doing it for the last 5 years. We are protecting a lot of enterprises around the world, a lot of telcos and vendors, and we are helping them to find the advanced attacks that we have seen on PC. We are seeing them on mobile. So that's what we are here for. That's why we wake up in the morning, find attacks.
Now, I understand that we've heard about the exploit here. You've given a fantastic presentation. You're not releasing the attack code just yet. You're going to give them a bit more time, but the fair rule is if an exploit gets out in the wild, then you publish.
Yeah, that's our plan at this point. We wanted to publish at the same time as the talk. We really did, but we were asked by some people that were kind of late stage trying to roll their updates out, and it's like, if you guys are close, I can understand waiting a little longer, and so we give them a little more time, and I think hopefully once that time limit is up, everything will be in a better position. But if not, I think people will be a little bit more motivated if they haven't gotten there yet.
I have to say that's wonderful to hear, because there are some research teams that would say, you've been dragging your feet for so long. No, this was the deadline. This is it. It sounds to me as if you're taking a responsible approach, which is if you've actually been working on it and you really need just a little bit more time, we'll delay until we actually start seeing attacks in the wild.
So that's what we have decided to do. Our goal is to provide security to everyone, and Josh have submitted the patches, and the whole cycle started. What we did find that a bit disturbing is that the vendors didn't receive the patches only a few months after he sent them, and we actually got that from the vendors directly, the largest ones in the world. So for future threats that we'll find, and they will find, they'll be able to collaborate directly, and I think that's a positive outcome of the entire thing.
Well, you've shook the world. Congratulations. It's very difficult to do. People aren't shocked by much, but this was a big one. Oh, could you please tell our audience where they can find you, where they can find Zimperium Z Labs, and where they could hear more about what you might be able to do for their enterprise? Either of you.
I think Zook can take this one.
Yeah, just zimperium.com. Contact us or follow us on Twitter, and that's it.
Zuck, Josh, thank you very much for speaking with us, and you stay tabbed, because we've got more from Black Hat 2015. Now, Cheebert, I think the original plan was that you were going to do that interview, but you were dog sick at Black Hat DEF CON, unfortunately.
Yeah. I could maybe get 2 or 3 words out before I have a coughing fit. And again, I say thank you so very much to the person on our tour of Alaska and the Yukon Territory that decided to cough all over everybody in the tour group and got us all infected. Thank you so very much.
By the way, I wanted to release that video. I think it was 3 weeks ago, because what had happened was someone did release an exploit into the wild, and the Zimperium Z Lab folks did publish their code. That was the deal. If an exploit makes it out into the wild, then it actually does more damage than good to hold it back, because they want people to take a look. If your Android device is not patched, you've got a problem, because it is so easy to do that exploit. And we're not going to go into it. I actually do have another question and answer session with Zimperium Z Labs. We may show it in a future episode of Twy It if Android does make a move to patch all the devices. Now, when we come back, we're going to be speaking with Marc Todd, the CEO of Skreens. His company has made a very interesting bit of technology that allows you to display what you want to display when you want to display it. But before we do that, let's thank the last sponsor of this episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and it's Igloo. Now, do you remember when the corporate internet was the cutting edge of enterprise communications? It was your own private internet. It combined all the things that you loved about the internet, plus the information that you needed to do business. Of course, that was then, and unfortunately, the reality is now that your corporate internet probably looks horrible. Anyone that's worked in a corporate environment knows that those screens are outdated, the graphics are horrible, the interface is just not right, and the user experience, well, what user experience? That's why we're so happy to have Igloo as a supporter of the Twy It Riot. Now, Igloo is an internet that you will actually like. It's a cloud portal that enables you to share files, collaborate on documents, blog updates, coordinate calendars, and manage projects, all from the same attractive and intuitive interface. Now, Igloo leverages the best part of the internet, important enterprise-specific data at your fingertips, and what people have come to expect from social. Igloo gives your users comments, like buttons, and the ability to add content based on permissions with drag and drop widgets and a WYSIWYG editor. Of course, a beautiful and intuitive interface isn't really very useful if your users can't access it on the devices that they're using. That's why Igloo is built with responsive design that automatically reformats to your phone or your tablet. It's also customizable. Whether you're a large enterprise using SharePoint or a fast-growing business with a hodgepodge of tools and platforms, you can now create an internet that matches your brand's look and feel, simplifies how you work, and is accessible on any device. Now, how about security? Well, how about this? They've got SSL and 256-bit encryption baked into a variety of access, authentication, and identity services to ensure that only authorized users have access to your internet. And their plans start as low as $3 per user per month. Unlike other solutions, you get full access to Igloo's entire suite of tools, all for one low price. Volume pricing is also available, used by government agencies and companies like Hulu, Inventive Health, American Family Insurance, and IP Switch. You have to try it today. If you need to refresh your corporate internet, if you need your employees to have access to the tools and the data that they need to do their jobs, there's no reason not to try Igloo. Sign up now, and you can try it for free at igloosoftware.com/twit. And when you sign up through our link, you can get your very own Igloo for up to 10 people absolutely free for as long as you want. That's igloosoftware.com/twit. igloosoftware.com/twit. And we thank Igloo for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Let's get to the main event. We welcome to the show Mr. Marc Todd, the CEO of Skreens. Mr. Todd, thank you very much for coming on to This Week in Enterprise Tech.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Now, if you could explain to the folks following along at home, what is Skreens? They probably have heard of your company in passing, but it was normally attached with things like TwitchCon or people who stream on the web. What does it do?
So let me describe it like this. First of all, here's one of the prototype boxes. The device that we've built combines simultaneous HDMI feeds, brings it into a dedicated piece of hardware, combines it with internet and the ability to size and to shape and combine and put it all out onto one screen. And so you can control it with either a tablet, an iOS or an Android application that we would provide. And there's also an API to allow you to, as you can see in the video, size, move, shape, choose what you want to create your own custom layouts on the TV screen. So in the case of TwitchCon and gamers and streamers and fantasy sports fans, you can see the attractiveness. This allows you to, say, for example, combine multiple set-top boxes, fantasy scores, so you can watch multiple games, watch your fantasy update stats. You can tweet, watch Twitter while you're watching a show. For gamers, you can play your Xbox or your PlayStation, or an Xbox and a PlayStation, and watch TV and tweet all on the same big screen. For streamers, they use the ability, because I'm doing video compositing, they use the product in the ingest point where they can combine the different camera feeds and gameplay, combine those together, and then push them up to Twitter or YouTube.
Mark, it's interesting. We've always got people who are asking, well, that sounds like a cool piece of technology, but why are we talking about it on an enterprise tech show? It seems kind of strange. But the fun part is you've come up with a technology that I believe at first was going to be used by gamers. It was going to be used by people who wanted a consumer level product that they could combine multiple screens on and create their own view space. Used by people who wanted to, say, stream onto Twitch. But it has rapidly found interest among an enterprise crowd, both as a signage tool, but also as a way for IT admins to display information in a single pane of glass without having to do any programming. Let me ask you this. How did you come up with the idea for the tech? What made you think, you know what, I need to create a box that will make it easy for someone to use just an app on a tablet or a phone to represent data any way they want?
Yeah, good question. Essentially, the genesis of the idea stems from two basic things. One, I was the CEO of a company prior to this for 11 years where we built video monitoring gear on core networks for video service providers and content providers. And I could see the enormous amount of video content going over networks and the fragmented content that makes it down to the consumer. And then the second component was quite frankly, a huge sports fan, and I want to watch more than one football game and baseball. My kids want to play Xbox. And in general, the idea originated from the idea that TV is not going to be strong enough for the way that people entertain themselves. But as the company for Skreens is about 3.5, 4 years old. But as I got into it and I started to write my patents and I built my prototypes, I realized that it's more than just television. All human displays, whether you're talking about digital signage or you're talking about televisions or monitors in a workspace, all have the same problem. It's that we have more capacity to drive video than the display has to keep pace. So what you end up having to do is have more displays. And you mentioned the enterprise space. This is a concept that we're at the end. How, many guys, many cubes have more than one PC, and you have multiple displays. You can't keep going with that. You're going to end up with multiple computing devices. You really should get to one display, plug it into a device like this, so that you can essentially create a virtual workspace on your, on one single display. And then there's many companies that are integrating video. So they'll have a cable feed or a DirecTV feed, or it'll come over a Netflix or a Hulu. And maybe it's a show for finance, and you got to keep pace in your job. That content going over networks, whether they're integrated networks or segregated networks, that shows up at the guy's desk as well. And so how do you integrate that in? This technology allows you to integrate those computing devices, that video feed, and we offer things like transparency and simple ways to move the data around so you can be more efficient, less displays, less cost, better workspace, less junk in your cube or your workspace, and you can go and maintain one display versus many. So that's a long explanation, but I believe that Skreens and the core technology, the chips that we've designed, the chip technology we designed, is going to change the way content interacts with human beings going forward, no matter where it is, in the home, military, casinos, digital signage, bars, restaurants, colleges, education facilities, just go on. Who wouldn't want the ability to control, size your video from multiple sources without a security problem, because it's dedicated hardware, without any kind of lag, because dedicated hardware doesn't spill between. It's not processor based where the video is. It's an FPGA, and it gives you an API control. So if you don't like my user interface, you can roll your own in HTML5, JavaScript, whatever you want.
And actually, let's talk about that. You have created a custom FPGA. So this is not a multi-use processor that's using a bunch of capture devices in order to bring in and then display content. You actually created a piece of silicon that does just that. And I think that that's where the flexibility of your solution comes in. And that's why we wanted it on the show, because it does make that wonderful transition from a consumer level device to enterprise, specifically enterprise for signage. Let me bring in one of my co-hosts here, Chee. You play with enterprise level display systems. Specifically at the university, you've been creating display walls. So you know how expensive it is to find an enterprise box that can do what Skreens is doing.
Well, actually, let's actually talk about apples to apples comparison. The very closest device I've ever been able to find to what the Skreens product does is actually from Steelcase. And if we could throw to the URL that I have in the doc, the Steelcase unit, the minimum buy-in for 4 inputs, and you're only able to switch between them. You can't tile them on the screen. The minimum buy-in is about $7,500. But even on something that simple, the usability, being able to throw your video around, being able to have in your work group the ability to see multiple screens all at once, whether or not it's a laptop or a tablet or a phone. Most of these guys now have the capability of going out HDMI. However, one of the guys in the Tinker Toy Tech in the chat room actually had a really, really good point, and I'd like to ask Marc this, is how are you guys handling HDCP encryption keys? And are you also doing things like EDID caching to handle the resolution?
Yeah, so let me take the first point there is the unit will be HDCP compliant, and I can do that because the video coming in on an HDMI is independently keyed, and then make the determination if the receiving end. So very much in that respect, like a router or a switch. The flexibility we talk about is this is a massive piece of technology that actually consumers have never seen a piece of silicon like this, to my knowledge. And I've been working in FPGAs for over 15 years. And even in the enterprise space, you see them, but when you touch them, as you point out, you're spending $75,000, $10,000 or more for them. And what we've done at Skreens is we've gone and taken the flagship chipset from our good friends at Xilinx, and we've partnered with them, and we saw that we can take this chip, and if we can get our volumes, like we're doing on Kickstarter now, if we can get our volumes, we see this need that everybody has it, we can make this box for under $500. And because it's upgradable, down the road, you're going to find something you want to do. You're going to want to create, we've added chroma key already. We've added transparency. We've added cropping. But there may be something else. There may be, some other kind of overlay that you want to automate. We can update the hardware by using software. And so unlike processors and DSPs, where it's general purpose, this was specifically designed for this specific purpose, and it's upgradable. So anything that we run into, like EDID caching or other things like that we find that we may need to adjust in the future as we, engage in battle into the consumer space or the enterprise space, we can update that over time. So yeah, I really think it's going to be quite disruptive.
What about the HDCP question? So again, if you can go a bit more in depth, there are always going to be people who are wondering, are you stripping out the security bit? Are you somehow passing it along?
Well, you pass it along.
Okay.
So when you're HDCP compliant, it says basically that if I'm going to accept HDCP content, and HDCP high definition content, protected content comes in, I will not send it out unless the receiving device is HDCP keyed. If it is non-HDCP in and non-HDCP in and non-HDCP in, then I can send it out to non-HDCP devices. Okay. So again, literally it's a matter of following the rules. People that strip out keys like that are usually trying to do something else. Like you're trying to, well, quite frankly, you're trying to move or copy the content to something else. We don't have that issue because our goal here is to display what we're getting onto a display that should be HDCP keyed. Almost all displays are now.
Right. Curtis, let me throw over to you. Go back a few years, and it was normal for enterprises to have PCs with just a single display. Most of the enterprises I deal with today, they understand that you get great performance increases from having multiple displays. It seems to me that this, as Chee mentioned, this is one of these changes in mindset that once someone sees in operation, in play, in an office or in a meeting where they can put multiple pieces of content on a single display in real time and change things around, they're going to say, that's what I want. I like that. I don't want to have to make a custom production every single time I want to do a display of usable information. I want to be able to drag in real-time sources, and therefore this is how we're going to proceed from now on. Do you think something like this would catch on? Would this hit that status of must-have for next meeting?
Oh, I think it certainly could, especially because, some of the things that are out there trying to be in the space, I'm thinking about things like Microsoft's amazingly large Surface Hub comes with an amazingly large price tag. A lot of companies love the idea, don't love the idea of plunking down $40,000 to $50,000 every time they need to put one in place. So I think the answer is yes. And you mentioned something that is very important, because what we're seeing, I think, is a real split in the way we think about screens. For a lot of what we do, we are walking around, we are being very mobile, and we're working with one screen, largely on a large smartphone or a tablet. But when we actually do sit down at a desk, and especially when we do sit down with other people, we typically want to be working with a lot of data at one time, and that's where a product like this can really shine. Not that everyone needs it every place they are, but there are key places, including offices where you're sitting at a desk for an extended period of time, and meeting rooms, conference rooms, huddle spaces, as they're called in a lot of new offices, those sorts of places, this is ideal.
You know, my dean wanted something like this about 5 years ago. And what we came up with was a video wall with a real honest-to-God video processor, and $250,000 later, we've got a beautiful system. But, you know, I want to ask Mark, so are one of those future upgrades going to be 4K? You know, I got to ask because, you know, 4K monitors are getting a lot less expensive now.
Well, let me show you guys something. If maybe you can see behind me, maybe you can hopefully see this. That's a 4K display right there. And so Skreens can move this on a 4K. You would be surprised at how good a 4K display is.
Wow.
With what Skreens already does. And let me show you this. One more little thing, and hopefully you can see it, is transparency, if you can see that.
Okay. Yay.
So now the reason that you don't see this on my video on my Kickstarter yet is I didn't know how to describe that, and sorry for the lighting. I didn't know how to describe that to gamers and streamers, but going forward, let me shrink that down again so I can shut the light down a bit. Going forward for the enterprise space, transparency without lag and without impacting the other video is going to be critical. As you said, so I was talking to somebody at HP at a show, and they were fascinated by this product because of its unique property of parallelism. So in the past, people look for parallelism in computing, and so we do it on the network, right? We create parallel processes on the network, and the idea is that we bring the data together across the network, really, between processors. But if you look at it a different way, by us creating this pixel engine, and it's massive pixel engine, remember there's not only 4 ports here, but I can cascade these. So if you want more HDMI simultaneous ports, put 2 boxes together, you get 7, put 3 together, you get 10, and so on. Because it's only 1 frame time, average time of around 10 milliseconds of delay. 3 or 4 of these are not even humanly perceptible. And what you're getting is video combination and parallelism without polluting or creating security issues between the 2 devices. So I can take 2 secure devices with a non-secure device where I couldn't combine them together in the internet. I can combine them together on the display. And so for guys that have to use this stuff and you're starting to think, oh, I got HDMI sticks and there's an HDMI port and I've got more computing, you're not going to have to fear, how am I going to plug all this stuff together? I think you're going to end up plugging it into a device like this and be able to use that 4K you just talked about. And so it works fantastic on a 4K. And mainly because the upconvert on 4K is so good, and the way that we do our compression, not a compression, but scaling algorithm, I think by happenstance, it works out to be, I think, the reciprocal of the expansion algorithm that they have in 4K TV. So the picture is out of this world. And later on down the road, the system that when you have 4K content, we can build the same thing in 4K. The architecture and the patent pending will all hold. It's just more data, and for that matter, 8K if you want. I think this is the new paradigm for how video data and how data needs to happen. And I think people will discover they're going to be more efficient. It's going to be cheaper. It's going to be better. It's going to be more secure. And quite frankly, you're going to have more fun. You're going to be able to play games, work, and watch displays all at the same time. How's that for a sales pitch?
We've been speaking with Marc Todd, the CEO of Skreens. Marc, I wanted to see you at TwitchCon, and now I'm so happy that we've had you on the show. That is some very cool tech, and it's one of these rare products that is really going to bridge consumer and enterprise. You're going to find uses in all places. I especially see its use for internet broadcasters. They finally can get their hands on something that won't cost multiples of thousands of dollars, that can give them something that looks like professional switching. Thank you for coming on to the show. This is your plug time. Could you please tell people where they can go if they want to pick one of these up, if they want to join the Kickstarter, if they want to find out more information about Skreens?
Yeah, absolutely. So right away, if you want to know more about Skreens, go to my website, www.skreens.com, Skreens with a K. What I'm asking is, I have a Kickstarter going on right now through the month of October. Anybody who thinks this is good technology, who wants to support me, help me bring this to market, I need the Kickstarter to show the industry that this is a needed product, and I need supporters to help me build my volume. And as you can see, we've had a fantastic first week. We've really hit it. Don't be afraid of the video. The video is targeting gamers and streamers and fantasy sports fans. That is my first beachhead market. But if you are an IT guy, you're a tech guy. If you like tech, you really want this box. And I would say the 4-port box is the really good one, because I'm using an FPGA that has over 4 million gates, and there's some funky things that I'm going to be able to do with that. And if you support me on Kickstarter now, you support Skreens and our company, you'll get your boxes in the March timeframe. And anybody has suggestions, partnering opportunities, any of those things, I'm open to listen. And I really appreciate your time and support. And thank you very much.
That's fantastic. Again, thank you so very much for being on this episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech. That's Marc Todd, CEO of Skreens. If you haven't heard of him, you will. Just wait. Unfortunately, folks, that's it for this episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech. That's right. You've used up another hour listening to the best dang enterprise podcast in the universe. That's according to 9 out of 10 HDCP protected displays. I want to thank my regular cast of characters, my co-hosts, for being here, for making Twiet what it is. We always start with Cheebert, and you know what? He lives in a really nice part of the world, so we're not going to do that this week. Let's start with Curtis. Curtis Franklin, where can people find you? What are you talking about on Information Week Radio, and where should they go if they want to see what you've been up to?
Well, I'm going to be covering the aftermath of the Gartner conference, and I'm going to be talking about things I'm looking forward to when I head off to SAP TechEd in a week or so. It's from a bunch of CIOs to the geekiest bunch of SAP jocks you will ever find. For all of that, you can check for my byline at informationweek.com. Please follow me on Twitter, KG4GWA, and look for me on Periscope as well. That's the video side of Twitter. Doing more with that. Check me out. Let me know what you think.
Have you very much, Curtis. It is always a pleasure. I'll see you next week. And on to you, Mr. Cheebert, the geek in paradise. What have you been up to? Are you doing any maker madness the next coming weeks, or what's the project that's pulling your time right now?
Well, right now I am designing a embedded systems class for the Global Environmental Sciences Department at the University of Hawaii, and I'm actually using a past Twiet episode appearance, the Electric Imp. So for $30, I get a very nice Internet of Things with a encrypted data link into the cloud and being able to get full meteorological information. And we are going to be introducing students on how to build their own science instruments instead of just buying them. And oh, by the way, Mark, you have some of my money. I cannot wait for my Skreens to arrive.
And actually, yes, I think I was like the third person to order. I got your email right before TwitchCon, right before I left for Maker, and I was like, yeah, want this, want to try it. So how about that?
Thank you very much.
We'll be able to show people as soon as it comes out. Gentlemen, thank you very much, all of you, for being part of this show. And also thanks to the audience, because without the audience, we wouldn't be able to indulge ourselves in enterprise goodness each and every single week. So we want to make it easy for you to get Twiet. Just go to our show page at twit.tv/Twiet. There you will find all of our back episodes, and you'll also find the links where you can subscribe to the feed. If you want the audio version, the video version, the high-definition video version in your iPhone, your iPad, your Android device, your laptop, your desktop, your Mac, your PC, whatever it is, we've got a feed for you so that you'll never miss a single minute of enterprisey goodness. Don't forget that we do this show live every week at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time on Fridays, live.twit.tv. If you're watching live, go ahead and jump into the live chat room at irc.twit.tv, and you'll be able to communicate with us and our guests. You see me. You guys are right down there. You're on a screen so that I can find out what you're interested in. What do you need answered? What do you need asked? What do you need to get your Twiet fix? Finally, I want to thank everyone here who makes this show possible. To Lisa and Leo, of course, for letting us do the show. To Carson, my super producer, and to my TD of the day, Mr. Alex Gumpel. And I've actually remembered his name this time.
You got it right.
Yeah, Alex, I don't know if you've got a camera on yourself, but could you say hi to the Twit TV audience?
Hi.
Yes,
I'm in the dark.
He is in the dark
Oh, but
today.
you can see the creepy photo of me on the show page. If we go back to the top of that, you could find me behind Brian.
That's him. Yes.
All the time, creepily sneaking up and pushing buttons.
And that's pretty much what the Flowmaster does. He pushes buttons and he keeps all the bits flowing here at Twit TV. Until next time, I'm Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the Enterprise, just keep quiet.